कुंजा बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी प्रभु जगन्नाथ, जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा, जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी जय जगन्नाथ, जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा, राधा माधव राधा माधव राधा माधव श्री राधे, जय राधा माधव राधा माधव राधा माधव श्री राधे, भरनिताय जय भरनिताय, पतित पावन गौरनिताय, गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय, पतित पावन गौरनिताय, जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय प्रभुपाद जय श्रीला प्रभुपाद। Hare Krishna. So today we are going to read from today we are going to read from Canto 4 and chapter 2, verse entitled. So I'll see if I can share the screen on mobile. Okay. So I think everybody can see my, yes. So this is the verse for today. तस्मा उन्मादनाथाय नष्टा शौचाय दुर्हृदे, दत्ता बता मया साध्वी चोदिते परमेष्ठिना, तस्मा उन्मादनाथाय नष्ट शौचाय दुर्हृदे, दत्ता बता मया साध्वी चोदिते परमेष्ठिना, तस्मा उन्मादनाथाय नष्ट शौचाय दुर्हृदे, दत्ता बता मया साध्वी चोदिते परमेष्ठिना। Word to word meaning. Tasmai, to him. Unmadanathaya, to the Lord of Ghosts. Nasta, Sauchaya, being devoid of all cleanliness. Durhride, heart filled with nasty things. Datta, was given. Bata, alas. Maya, by me. Sadhvi, Sati, Chodite, being requested. Parmesthina, by the supreme teacher. Brahma. Translation. By His Divine Grace, Abhijeet Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. On the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my chaste daughter to him. Although he is devoid of all cleanliness and his heart is filled with nasty things. Purport: it is the duty of the parents to hand over their daughters to the suitable person just befitting their family tradition in cleanliness, gentle behavior, wealth, social position, etc. Daksha was repentant that on the request of Brahma, who was his father, he had handed over his daughter to a person who, according to his calculation, was nasty. He was so angry that he did not acknowledge that the request was from his father. Instead, he referred to Brahma as Parmeshti, the supreme teacher in the universe. Because of his temperament of gross anger, he was not even prepared to accept Brahma as his father. In other words, he accused even Brahma of being less intelligent because he had advised Daksha to hand over his beautiful daughter to such a nasty fellow. In anger, one forgets everything, and thus Daksha, in anger, not only accused the great Lord Shiva but criticized his own father, Lord Brahma, for his not very astute advice that Daksha hand over his daughter to Lord Shiva. I'm also asked to speak on verse number 17. I'll just go through the verse. Maitreya Vacha Vininde Vinindiyevam sa girisham apratipam avasthitam dakshothapa upasprisya kruddha saptum prachakrame. Maitreya Vacha, Maitri said, Vinindaya, abusing, evam, thus saha he, means Daksha, Girisam, Shiva, Apratipam, without any hostility, Avasthitam, remaining, Daksha, Daksha, Atha, now, Apa, water, Upasprisya, washing hands and mouth, Krudha, angry, Saptum, to curse, Prachakrame, began to. The sage Maitreya continued, thus Daksha, seeing Lord Shiva sitting as if against him, washed his hands and mouth and cursed him in the following words. Verse number 18. Ayam tu deva yajna indropendradibhir bhava sahabhagam na labhatam dever deva ganadhama. I am that too, but deva yajne, in the sacrifice of the demigods, Indra Upendra Adibhi, with Indra Upendra and the others, Bhava Shiva Saha, along with Bhagam, a portion, no, not Labatam, should obtain Deva with the demigods, Deva Gana Adhama, the lowest of all the demigods. The demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all the demigods, should not have a share. Purport: because of this curse, Shiva was deprived of his share in the oblation of Vedic sacrifices. It was due to the curse of Daksha. Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this connection that Lord Shiva was saved from the calamity of taking part with other demigods, who are all materialistic. Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it is not fitting for him to eat or sit with materialistic persons like the demigods. Thus, the curse of Daksha was indirectly a blessing, for Shiva would not have to eat or sit with other demigods who were too materialistic. There is a practical example set for us by Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who used to sit on the side of a latrine to chant Hare Krishna. Many materialistic persons used to come and bother him and disturb his daily routine of chanting. So, to avoid their company, he used to sit by the side of a latrine where materialistic person would not go because of the filth and obnoxious smell. However, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was so great that he was accepted as the spiritual master of such a great personality as His Divine Grace Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. The conclusion is that Lord Shiva behaved in his own way to avoid materialistic persons who might disturb him in his prosecution of devotional service. Hare Krishna. So, okay. All right. So, today is a very beautiful verse where it is said that uh, the Daksha, who was very upset with his fate, that he has gifted his very qualified, beautiful daughter to Lord Shiva, who, although the greatest personality in this whole universe, but in the calculation of illusioned vision of Daksha, was not a very suitable husband. He was not at par in cleanliness, in his standards, in his character, in his behavior with the status of Daksha. And thus, Daksha is with very uh, ill heart, with very frustrated mind, he's trying to curse Lord Shiva. So, Srila Prabhupada in his purport is writing a very beautiful point that anger blinds a person. So, Lord Krishna explains the signs of anger in Bhagavad Gita. ध्यायतो विषयान पुंसा संगस्तेषु विजायते संगत संजायते कामा कामा क्रोधो विजायते. What is this anger? So first of all, it is said that when a living entity in this material world who is searching after uh, the sense gratification, a certain sense objects come to his notice and he contemplates on those sense objects. And because there's a natural thirst, living entity is very thirsty, very hungry in this material world. So as soon as he little bit contemplates, immediately he develops lust. Immediately he want to dominate over that sense object. Immediately he want to declare himself as the enjoyer, controller, and proprietor of that sense object. And thus lust develops. But the nature of this world is that no matter who we are, is our capacity to enjoy is very limited. The sense objects are very temporary in nature. What gives pleasure today may not give pleasure tomorrow. The control is very limited. We may control something for some time, but it slips away. It comes in the control of somebody. And then that frustration of not being able to enjoy, not being able to control, leads to anger. So anger is nothing but it's a contaminant factor of lust only. So that lust turns into anger. Yes. And then what happens with that anger? Krodho bhavati sammoha, sammoha buddhi naso vinashyati. And gradually that krodha, it takes over the soul. It already the soul is covered by the mind, subtle body, by the gross body, in complete ignorance of its identity as the servant of Supreme Lord. And then when there is an agitation in that subtle body, it becomes even more smoky. It becomes even more, uh, has a very high covering effect on the soul. His intelligence is fully lost. His intelligence stops working because there is so much agitation in the mind. Just like when there is a lot of smoke, that smoke covers everything. Everything becomes, the visibility becomes very minimum. One is not able to see even the things which are few meters away. That's the effect of smoke and fog. The same things happen within the mind. The mind is so agitated. Why I'm not able to enjoy? Why this sense object? Why this person is getting out of my control? There's so much of smoke within the mind that everything becomes invisible. Even the intelligence stops working. Yes. And then the mind starts cursing all those factors which became the obstacle in the execution of sense gratification. Yes. So the same thing happens. So here also Daksha, he becomes forgetful. And what he's speaking, he doesn't know. Yes. He becomes completely forgetful of even the position of Lord Shiva. What to say of Lord Shiva? He becomes even the ignorant of his position of Lord Brahma. He's not addressing Lord Brahma as his father. Rather, he's even indirectly trying to curse Lord Brahma also, who was the advisor in the marriage. So this is what the anger does. That buddhi nasho, the buddhi becomes nasha. And then what, in that, when the buddhi is switched off, so burning in that fire of anger, lust, a person does whatever his mind dictates at that time. He does all sort of things without knowing what he is doing, what will be his result, and finally landing up into vinashyati, buddhi naso vinashyati, that he becomes completely destroyed. And one of the most fitting example of such is the example of Ramayana, where Ravan, who was so much, he so Surpanakha made that contemplation in the mind, on the mind of Ravana, that Sita is so beautiful. Contemplating, it consolidated into lust. I want to enjoy Sita. He brought Sita. But when Sita is not very handy, Sita is not becoming so accessible. He's finding, I'm not able to control Mother Sita. Anger. In that anger, I will. He became so furious that he was ready to lose his kingdom, lose his son, lose his brother. When Vibhishan tried to console him, that please, brother, it's not good, it's adharmic to enjoy somebody's wife. Sita is like a snake who's looking like very cool, but it is actually a cause of destruction for you. Please leave it. Because Vibhishan was coming in between the enjoyment of Ravan with Mother Sita. Ravan kicked off Vibhishan already. He became angry on Vibhishan. This is the nature. He lost his ever well-wisher, that is Vibhishan. And then gradually Buddhi Nasho, his intelligence stopped working. He was ready to put everybody, his kingdom, his all subjects, in that fire of lust to just get destroyed. Finally, he himself was destroyed. He destroyed everything connected to him. So that's the nature of anger. It takes over us. It drives the whole system. We become a slave. We become so uh, caught up. We become so ignorant. And this is what is happening with Daksha. We have sense objects. So that's why a devotee should be very, very careful that how that whenever such emotions, such negative emotions dominate us, it's the time to, because we ourselves becomes incapable. We cannot handle it. The rush of those emotions. At that time, we very much need the shelter of devotees who may protect us from doing what our mind and senses dictate at that time. Because at that time, the intelligence stops working. On our own, we cannot. Just like a person caught up in a flood. Everywhere there's a flood. The flood is so, suppose a person is caught up in the ocean. The waves are, the ocean is so insurmountable. He cannot come out of himself, no matter how much he try. He moves his hand like this, legs like this, he shout, nothing happens. The only shelter is that in that ocean. So that ocean is the samsara, the three modes. The soul is very tiny. The three modes are like so huge. The Prakriti is so huge that the soul becomes very, very helpless in battling the waves of the three modes. He is so helpless. He just gets carried away by the lust, by the three modes of material nature. And the only hope is if some devotee, we cry out, "Oh Krishna, please help me." And some servant of Krishna, some representative of Krishna comes. Now, we have seen a very beautiful picture of a person crying out, and Krishna is coming on Garuda and picking him up from that ocean. The only hope is that some outer help which is beyond the ocean comes. Within the ocean, there is no solution. The only solution is beyond the ocean. That help comes and pick us up. That's the only hope. So, moving forward to verse number 18. In the verse number 18 is another very beautiful lesson to be learned, and that is that Daksha became his ignorance, his buddhi naso reached to such a level that he practically cursed Lord Shiva. And that's the misuse of the power. Daksha was very powerful, but in that situation, so power is very, very, it is a very good thing. At the same time, it's like a razor blade. The blade is very powerful, it can cut off many things, but a little mistake, that blade can simply slit the skin, oozing out the stream of bloods. So that's the power of blades. And similarly, the power, the whatever power, be it a mystic power, be it the power of anything, and a post position, they are very powerful. Using those powers, one can do insurmountable things. But little misuse of that power can lead to a complete different direction, a complete different destiny, a complete different outcome. So that is what Daksha has done, because he has power and because he is now fully under capture of his anger. So that power is directed in a very, very wrong way. And thus one should be very, very careful of his own power, position. Whenever we have some opulence, any opulence, be it beauty, be it intelligence, be it a lot of money, be it even the spiritual strength, be it vairagya, where everybody is respecting us, any any little opulence, any little power we have to be extremely, extremely careful to very humbly use it in Krishna's service. You know, a little agitation of modes, a little agitation of mind can just drive our intention in misutilizing those power. And the more power we have, the more destruction and a more potential destructive power we have. You know? So a person having a very middle class person trying to somehow end his needs, somehow trying to maintain his family, what destruction he can do, even if he becomes ill motivated. But a king, a prime minister, if he becomes ill motivated, if his ego, his sense gratification desires dominates over his intelligence, what destruction he can do. And that's why the history is the proof, where many, many great kings who had a lot of power, who had a lot of dominance, just because of being carried away by the wrong emotions of their mind, they did huge destruction. And not only they get affected, not only their family get affected, the entire kingdom gets affected, the entire the entire praja gets affected so much. So the more power we have, the more potential and a destructive factor also we have. The more power we have, the more constructive as well as destructive both factor we have. So extremely, extremely careful. And especially in spiritual life, as we progress, when people start respecting us, and when because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, when our senses start becoming little bit in control, we start getting a lot of knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and uh, and we really are trying to come out of the material modes. So extremely, extremely careful that whatever whatever we have got, gifts we have got in Krishna consciousness, let us preserve it very nicely and use it in Krishna service. Not that those same gifts we try to show it off, or we try to misutilize it, or and gradually becoming deviated from it, from the goal of life. So as we progress in our bhakti, as we get certain opulences, certain gifts by Krishna, it's our duty to very cautiously cultivate them, cultivate the devotion. Because that's the goal of not to deviate from it, not to get blinded, as here Daksha is getting blinded and he's misutilizing his power. That's another very important lesson to be learned. Another very beautiful lesson which Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is bringing out for this verse is that Daksha has cursed Lord Shiva that, oh, you obnoxious fellow, you dirty fellow, you are not befitting to be a demigod. You are not befitting to sit with other devatas and have the part of sacrifice or part of the offering. Yes. Which according to Daksha, he is thinking that that by cursing Lord Shiva like this, I am causing a great harm to Lord Shiva. You know, I am his ego is becoming very happy. Oh, I have done a lot of harm to Lord Shiva. And this is what happens, that when those envy dominates over us, we rejoice in the distress of others. Our happiness is the distress of other people. And this is what Daksha is feeling in his heart. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is pointing out that Daksha is a fool. Why? Because the curse which he is giving is actually a benediction for Lord Shiva. How it is the benediction? And Srila Prabhupada is pointing out very beautifully. Because Lord Shiva is cursed that he is not befitting to sit with other demigods and partake the share of offering. It's a very good situation. It's a blessing in disguise for Lord Shiva. Because all the devatas, they are not on the pure devotional platform. Their surrender to Lord Krishna is tinged with the karma. Their uh, their service to Krishna is tinged with some personal gratification for themselves also. And how Daksha's curse is helping Lord Shiva to make a very differentiating border, discriminating line between mixed devotional service and pure devotional service. Yes. Apparently it looks same. That all the devatas, they are the extending limbs of Supreme Lord. They are so nicely serving Supreme Lord. Yes, but going very deeper, there is a very subtle difference between pure devotional service and mixed devotional service. For an immature person, even for an immature devotee, apparently it may look same. Just like Rupa Goswami gives example of how when the creeper of devotional service is growing, the main creeper of devotional service and the weeds which grow along with those creeper, they may look little similar. If a devotee is not very matured, he may think that, oh, my devotional creeper is so nicely growing, it is so lushy green. Along with creeper, so many other plants are also growing. It's looking so greeny. Oh, my devotional service is so nice. But Rupa Goswami, he says, no, those are the weeds which look little similar to the main creeper or devotional service. Those weeds which gradually choke up the growth of the main creeper, because those weeds, they will start consuming the nutrients which is actually going in the main devotional service, and gradually one will start feeling weak in Krishna consciousness. So here Daksha, who is very immature, he is thinking that he is doing great harm to Lord Shiva, but he is helping Lord Shiva to being detached, to being away from the mixed devotional service and to rise to the pure devotional service. It's a great blessing for Lord Shiva. Yes, as Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, Lord Shiva doesn't any long has the obligation of sitting with all the devatas and getting all the offerings. He he did no longer associate too much with the devatas. Yes, and that's a great benediction for Lord Shiva. And this is what happens in our own Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, you know, the apparent misfortunes which happens in our life may be a great blessings by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We may feel, oh, why this happened with me? Why the most desired object of my life has gone away? But actually, it may be a great blessings of Krishna. Yes, because Krishna, this was the same question which was asked in Srimad Bhagavatam to Narad Muni, that why sometime the devotees of Lord Krishna, they are poverty stricken. Sometimes they meet with great misfortunes. Whereas devotee of Lord Shiva, they are very flourishing. What is this? Krishna is himself living in Dwarka, but why it happens that sometimes his devotees, they are living in poverty like Sudama, Narsim Mehta, etc. But but Lord Shiva himself is living like a Vairagi in Kailash. But his devotees are very rich. Why does it happen? And in answer, our acharyas say, because Krishna, he he is like that great benefactor, great well-wisher of a living entity. He doesn't want living entity to just settle up with the cheap temporary objects of this world. He want to gift them something very high. Yes, and in order to gift them very high things, sometime Krishna, you know, he may even create a certain apparent disturbance, you know, a certain apparent poverty in the life of a devotee. Yes, so that he can actually get the real nectar of pure devotional service. And that's why our acharyas say, if Krishna is just happy with somebody worshipped Krishna, and Krishna is just okay with that person, he may give him what he wants. But if Krishna is really pleased upon some devotee, he really want to help somebody, he is really concerned about somebody, then that verse of Bhagavatam, which Srila Prabhupada quoted when his entire factory was burning on fire, Harishya tad dhanam shanay, that Krishna will take away everything. Yes. So that that living entity may no longer be surrounded with all those substandard things. You know. Rather, he becomes helpless and he focuses his entire attention. He loses all his hope to enjoy this world. Yes. And his entire consciousness, his entire focus becomes Vivasayatmika Buddhi Eke Guru Nandana. The only shelter, the only hope is now Krishna. And thus he starts focusing on pure devotional service. So Krishna doesn't want to settle his devotees with something very substandard, with something very, very uh, pseudo Krishna consciousness or something like that. He want to give them the real happiness of being the servant of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is exactly what is happening to Lord Shiva here. The same episode happens with Narad Muni. And the person cursing Narad Muni was also same. That was Daksha. Daksha, he even cursed Narad Muni because at that time again, Daksha was blinded. At that time again, Daksha's lust, unfulfilled lust, transformed into anger. And he became so blind, so covered up, that he practically cursed Narad Muni. And what was the curse given to Narad Muni? That you, Narad Muni, you think that you have a great power, you can travel from here to there, from Vaikuntha to here, Vaikuntha to there. And because of this traveling, you have destroyed the life of so many people, turning them into brahmacharis, immaturely turning them into vairagi. My curse is that you cannot stay at one place for more than a certain amount of time. You have to keep moving. And apparently, it may look a great harm done to Narad Muni. Apparently, the ego of Daksha may think, oh, I have really you know, done that harm to Narad Muni. I have really taken that revenge. You know. But, but it became a great boon for Narad Muni. Yes. Why it became a great boon? Because now Narad Muni can become a can become even more great preacher. You know. He earlier he used to you know he may go at one place, stay for a long time, preach to few people, but now he cannot stay at a place. He has to keep moving at one place to another place. So now the region, the domain of his preaching is so huge. In a particular time, he may at different place preaching to different type of people, different at different place preaching to different circumstances of people. And thus Narad Muni's preaching, it became even more uh, even more bombastic. You know? He preached to so many people, traveling from one place to another place, and thus the curse of Daksha, so-called curse of Daksha, became actually a great beneficiary for both Narad Muni and all the people who received the mercy of Narad Muni, in his traveling from one place to another place. So, so same thing happened, like one small example. Just recently, we all have come up with the great disaster of COVID-19. So apparently, it seemed that COVID-19 has come, and all devotees were thinking that COVID-19, because of COVID-19, all temples will close down. How will preaching happen? How will this happen? That happen? But the experience of all the temples, all devotees is that because of COVID-19, the preaching almost doubled and tripled. The amount of books distributed during COVID, it outnumbered being distributed in any of the previous years. Yes. There's so many people because they were so frustrated with COVID-19. Their all the sense gratificatory program got destroyed. Their all the plans to dominate over the material nature was fully frustrated, and thus they were really looking for what is higher, what is life, what is death, and thus they were coming in the shelter to take the knowledge from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and thus the so-called curse of COVID-19 actually became a benediction for so many people who got connected to Krishna consciousness. Because of COVID-19, they got little time. They didn't know what is family life. Whole day, their passion was driving them to run from pillar to post. to get some money, some sense gratification. But during COVID-19, because COVID-19 it obstructed that pursuit, they got little time to sit at one place to contemplate on some higher purpose of life. Yes. So in our life also, we should know that that some that and that's why Srila Prabhupada very much he quoted this very celebrated verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by Lord Brahma. That is Tate Anukampa Sumishiksha Mano Bhunjan Evatma Kritam Vipapam Hidva Vipurvir Vidvan Namaste Jiveta Mukti Sapada Dayabhak. That how a devotee, even in great misery, he doesn't curse Lord. Rather, he is grateful to the Lord. He has full faith in the Lord that, oh Lord, whatever you are doing to me is of some benefit. It is, yes, and it is coming out of my own karma. These miseries are coming because of my own karma. But Krishna, you are so merciful because I have become your devotee. You are trying to give this karma in such a way. Anyway, that karma would have come in my life. Anyway, I have to suffer all those pains and pleasure. But Krishna, you are giving those pleasure and pain in such a way. You are arranging my life in such a way so that, first of all, the pain is minimized. And second of all, I come closer to you. You know? You are making those arrangements so that I can take maximum shelter of you. And thus, even in this difficulty, I take shelter of you. And that's why Kunti Maharani prays, Tvam Akinchanam Janm Aishwarya Shruta Shribir Edaman Madhapuman. That how having a great wealth, thinking that life should go according to me, having that conception that if this happens in my life, this is the best thing. Thinking with our limited mind and intelligence that if these things are like this thing is like this, if life is arranged like this, then I will be very happy. That is the best position. Even in spiritual life, we think if things happen like this, then I am advancing in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna, who is the supreme well-wisher, he knows what is the best for us. And that's why Kunti Maharani prays that Krishna is Tvam Akinchana Gochara. You are the Lord of Akinchana. Akinchan means one who has lost all the faith in Janmeshwarya and Shruti. And, uh, and thus losing the taste, the faith that I can be enjoyer in this material world. And that is the most favorable ground to come closer to you. Yes. Because at that time only can one very feelingly call out, Oh Krishna, Oh Govinda, please help me. I am yours. In that state only. Otherwise, because these material objects, they may remain with us. And one of the effect of having those material surrounded by material luxuries and material opulences is that it injects a kind of an intoxicated state in a person. It makes a person feel very, very secured. It gives a certain kind of excitement to the subtle body. And that in that material excitement, in that material security, it's very difficult for a person to call out to Lord, to the Lord. And that's why sometimes apparently it's our own karma, but Krishna arranges that karma in such a way so that we can take maximum shelter of him and we can take minimum security of those material things. Thus, he minimizes our dependence on the material things and maximizes our helplessness to take shelter of Lord Krishna. And that's the great, great mercy of Lord, how he arranges a devotee life. And that's why even in Chaitanya Charitamrita we see that how even Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Sanatan Goswami, how they were stuck up in the kingdom of Muslim king. And apparently they were feeling it's a great misfortune. Why it is happening like that? But gradually, we see that how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually take them out of that situation. He arranges their life in such a way so that they come out of those situations. Sanatan Goswami was practically present, but Krishna showed the way that how they can come and take shelter in Vrindavan. And even in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful pastimes of Narada boy. Narada boy, only shelter was his mother, and it was fully dependent on his mother. He was a child. It's not that he was a very adult, matured. He can take care of himself. No, he was fully dependent on the mother. And when he made Bhakti Vedantas, and a great fortune came in his life, he got the taste, of the Krishna Katha. He got fully enlightened by the Sangha of Bhakti Vedantas. And apparently, his mother once died because of a snake bite. And Srila Prabhupada writes in purport, it seems that it's a very great misfortune for Narada boy. His only shelter, you know, whom he was fully dependent both physically, emotionally, has now left him. But actually, it proved to be a great benediction for our Narada boy, because because he was fully enlightened by Bhakti Vedantas. And thus, that enlightenment in that unfavorable circumstances, so called unfavorable circumstances, it became even more intensified. He thought, okay, now my material life is end. Whom I will live for? The only person, my mother also left me. Now there is no reason for me to continue this material life. Yes. All, all the avenues where Narda boy could have banged upon to enhance his material life fully collapsed. And now only shelter was remaining for him was just follow the instructions of Bhakti Vedanta. Just go to the forest. And thus that boy became the great Narad Muni, the Satyavish avatar of Lord. In the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj was also practically cursed by his stepmother, that you have to take birth from my womb. Then only you can enjoy the love of your father. And that Dhruva boy who had the Kshatriya blood, he became furious. He became very angry, and he practically left home. It seemed that it's a very misfortune condition for him. But how that misfortune became a great fortune? Because when he lost faith in his own father, because he actually his agitation was that even my father didn't resist. Now whose shelter he will take? The only person who was remaining to take shelter for Dhruva boy was his own mother, who was also helpless. So the shelter whom he is taking of his own mother, she also doesn't have a shelter, because you know, because her husband was very neglectful of her. She was practically living in that palace just like a maid servant. She was not getting any attention from her husband. Her only shelter was Lord, and the only shelter she could have offered to Dhruva was also the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And thus she told Dhruva, Dhruva, I am also helpless. But if you really want some help from me, I can only advise you that Krishna is very merciful. You couldn't get love of your father, you couldn't get love of your stepmother, but Krishna is equivalent to thousands and millions of mothers. Only he can fulfill the desire of any living entity. And thus, apparently, that situation which was looking very, very unfavorable, it was looking like a curse. It was looking like, there is no meaning of living for Dhruva Maharaj. His own father has neglected him. He went out to the forest, and thus he met Narad Muni, and he fully dedicated himself to the instructions of Narad Muni. And what came out of that unfavorable situation was the pure devotee, the shining diamond, pure devotee, that is Dhruva Maharaj. And we see that the Dhruva Maharaj again got back. What he desired, he actually got. Lord Vishnu was ready to give him the entire kingdom, greater than even Lord Brahma. But that time Dhruva Maharaj was so satisfied by devotional service, he didn't wanted that. But of course, Lord knew that Dhruva's heart is fully pure. He will not misutilize it. He gave him. Yes. And thus, this should be our faith. So in our life, that whenever, and thus in our life, we should bank upon the shelter of Lord Krishna. And so-called sometimes misfortunes, we should uh, we should take shelter of spiritual master and devotee to see them as a good fortune, and thus be elevated in our consciousness to Lord Sri Krishna. And thus we should have full faith in the plan of the Lord. It will be difficult. It's not so easy to digest it. It's very easy to speak here, sitting here, and it's very easy to hear it sitting on the other side. But it's not so easy to practice it. But our only shelter is the association of Vaishnavas, the shelter of the spiritual master, who can show us what is of great importance and what is not so important, which our material mind values so much, and thus make progress in those misfortune, in difficulties, in so-called curses of material nature, as here Daksha has been doing. And that's why the greatest thing which Krishna can do to us is to detach us from the material association and place us in association of a pure devotees. That's the best thing which Krishna can do to us. And when Krishna does that operation on us, it will look like an operation. Operation means what? Removing some unwanted thing from the body part and putting already existing things in proper order. So when Krishna does that operation, we should be, it will be painful, because he's detaching us from all those things which we have lot of faith and shelter upon. It will be like operation, but we should move on. We should see the beautiful hands of the Lord. And this is practically what happened with Lord Shiva. The curse of Daksha, it fully detached himself from all those substandard activity of receiving the shares of demigods and all those things, to associate too much with the demigods. He's sitting peacefully in Kailash, just doing his bhajan. Ram Ram Rameti Mano Ram Rame Rame. He's speaking Bhagavatam to Parvati Mata. He's speaking Ramayana to Parvati Mata. Yes. And sometime when the demigods, they get confused regarding certain uh, issues, they approached Lord Shiva. So thus Lord Shiva became the crest level of all demigods by this curse of Daksha. He is no longer among them, but he's above them. He becomes a guiding light for all demigods. And thus he's only left with just doing bhajan. He is no longer into all these activities of devtas, of of material exchange with their followers. That you give me yajna, I will give you material things. He is away from all that. Okay, so I think we have already reached to the time limit. So with this, we would like to end today's session with a prayer that may Jagannath give us the strength to see what is good for me and to change all the misfortunes of life into good fortune, to lose our faith and shelter, security in material things, and find our shelter and security in the lotus feet of Lord Sri Jagannath Swami. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we'll end today's class. If anybody has any feedback or any question, they can ask. Okay. Yes, Prabhuji, you want to say something?
Prabhu, thank you very much for such a nice, wonderful explanation on on both. When you gave this example of Narad Muni, Lord Shiva, that because of the curse, they actually prioritize their other parts of their activities, which is Krishna consciousness. So really appreciate that input, sir. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful explanation. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Alright, so we'll end today's class. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.